Welcome to Quick Tech Talk, hosted by Michael Anderson and Daniel Sloan.
Hey folks, welcome to the Quick Tech Talk. Today we are joined by my co-host Daniel Sloan and guest Andrew Darley, who is a blockchain consultant, advisor to Urban Chain, and the former leader of IBM's go-to-market for Blockchain Europe. And today we'll be talking about transparent supply chain for consumer goods and the future of cryptocurrency. Daniel, thanks for being with me, and Andrew, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
As always, a pleasure, Michael.
It's great to have you both on the show. So, Andrew, you've got me curious. There are a lot of companies that are coming online more and more often that are wanting conscious consumer processes and more transparent supply chain, right? Greater knowledge and awareness of what's going on behind the scenes. When you purchase something, you actually want to know where it came from and who are all the hands and pieces that touched it. So you before we jumped on, you talked about provenance and increasing transparency in supply chains through blockchain. So I'm curious, what are some of the benefits that consumers can realize from platforms like Provenance, and what are the advantages for the businesses who are using it?
So I think it's really something that's going to take off and become a tidal wave, right? So what we are seeing is some of the big supermarkets over here in Europe have adopted this, and they've seen stunning results. I mean, for retail, really stunning results. So Carrefour, who are the second largest supermarket in France, they've implemented this on about 30 SKUs so far. Wow. And for those SKUs, they've seen sales growth of up to 8%, which is crazy. In retail, 0.1% is a big sales growth, but they've seen stunning sales growth, and it's really because the consumers love it. So they've done some studies, and what they've seen is you'll get a packet of goods, right, with a QR code on the front, and you can scan that through your loyalty app, and it'll give you information about the product. And on average, the consumers spend 50 seconds reading that. So 50 seconds interacting with the product, okay? Wow. And then you put that with the stat that the sales growth has been stunning. You've got two really cool things there. The consumers are engaged and it's driving more sales. So, this isn't a fad. This isn't a passing thing. I think this will be a zero-sum game in the future. I think this is the future.
Yeah, well, the benefits and face time with consumers and increase in revenue would certainly indicate that. And so I'm just curious, at the supermarket level, are they seeing with those products, are they seeing from a revenue perspective, a greater increase than the cost to implement a system like this?
Yeah, well, two things, right? One is, there's not just the growth in the products for which this system is implemented, right? Which is a little bizarre. There's actually a brand lift for the whole brand, right? So there's a strange effect that if you have provenance on some of your products, the consumers tend to trust the other products in your store more as well. So your whole brand is lifted, right? And that's a really cool effect for the people that are implementing the system. And then the second part of your question, does the benefits outweigh the costs? Actually, the costs are relatively light because this blockchain is relatively simple to implement. It's a cloud-based system with cloud economics. You can start small and you only scale the costs when you're starting to get those benefits. It's a nice equation. It's an equation which is very unlike traditional IT of 10 years ago, where you had a huge upfront investment and sure, benefits flow down the line. This is very different.
Right. And are there any other use cases or industries where you see platforms like this and new opportunities for greater transparency?
Well, for sure. Yeah. So we talked about Carrefour, right, who are a big retailer. So I guess they're like Walmart or, something similar in the US. Yeah. But one of the other dynamics that we're seeing is local producer networks getting together to assert the provenance of their goods, right? We recently launched the Umbrian Food Network in Italy, which is a small association of local producers. So a semolina mill that makes pasta flour, olive oil producers, and so on, all in a local area, getting together to push the provenance and the organic nature of their foods. And I think things like that, small producer networks will really be a big dynamic going forward. But you can also broaden it outside food, right? So you've obviously got the provenance of food. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Consumers want it. But look at luxury goods as well. So look, for example, at women's handbags. Okay, very expensive. I know this. My wife has a few more than she needs, right? And there are very good fakes out there. There are very good counterfeits out there, right? And how can you be sure that your bag is genuine, right? That the people that you're buying it from are selling you a genuine item, and that's a big provenance item, which I think is going to be important going forward. And the important thing there is, how do you do the physical item, the physical bag, to digital representation? How do you get a one-to-one analog between the physical thing and the digital namesake, right? So that you can be sure that your bag is the genuine article, right? And there are ways to do that. And so, for example, let me give you one way to do that. You can't really do it with the barcode, right? Because you could put a QR code in an expensive bag, but that could be faked, right? Somebody could take that code, they could copy it and put it in a different bag, right? So a different way to do it, or a better way to do it, is to embed something in the bag itself which is unique. And for example, if you have a banknote and you hold it up to the light, or put it under a UV light, you'll see little fibers in there which are unique, like the retina of your eye. You can put fibers like that in an expensive item, and they are absolutely unique. You can scan it under a machine reading camera, and then you have a one-to-one representation, physical to digital, of the lining of a bag, for example. And you know absolutely it's genuine or not.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I hadn't realized that. There's multiple uses of technology there. And so we a little bit earlier, we were talking about the economic benefits of implementing blockchain in various industries. And right now, at a global level, right, there's a lot of hype around Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. So thinking from a business perspective, how should they prepare and adapt for this new evolution?
Well, that's a big question, right? We'll need to break that down a little bit to give a sensible answer to that. And I think there's a real change coming in financial services, right? Blockchain's been rattling around in financial services for maybe 5 or 6 years, but it's generally so far been a little bit niche and really not doing anything earth-shattering. But I think that's about to change. I think we're getting very close to a second big wave where it really does disrupt the way things work. And the sort of thing that I'm thinking of is that there will be very soon, maybe by the end of this year, real-time exchange of cryptocurrency for fiat currencies, the currencies that we know, US dollars and so on, right? And that starts to mean that capital markets companies, your Goldman Sachs of the world, can actually start trading digital things, digital assets, in the same way as they treat physical assets at the moment. And until now, that's not really been mainstream, but you can see that whole landscape changing, and you can have a digital asset wrap, which is traded like a commodity at the moment, like pork bellies or shipping or whatever, right? Yeah. And when that starts to happen, you'll see a real dynamic in financial services, which is new and very exciting. And if you try and translate that to the consumer, right, just to you and me, I think what it means is you can have assets which are Bitcoin or Ether or whatever coin you want, and you really can treat it like real money, right? It is interchangeable in real time, and we're starting to see solutions to some of the problems that make that difficult today. So I'm sure Bitcoin varies wildly day by day, right? And you might get a 10% change on the day on the value of the whole thing. And if you're doing a trade at the moment and that's not in real time, i.e. you bid for something and then there's a bit of a time delay while it's processed. The whole thing, the value of what you've bid for can change, right?
Yeah.
So we need to get to real-time settlement. And I think that's coming. I'm seeing some really cool technologies coming, which are going to hopefully fix that. And a couple of them that I know of are in pilots in London today.
Very cool. Well, and that kind of brings me to my question, because I think you bring up some good points, right? We're actually partnered with a company called PayZ, because they are doing credit card processing for a number of merchants, and one of their partners, I think, does about 4 billion in credit card processing. And they're constantly asking them, these bigger customers, hey, what's your appetite? PayPal's now taking crypto and this and that, and it's always the same thing. We don't want to deal with the volatility, right? If someone comes in and someone pays, for $1,000 worth of goods, we don't want to, at the end of the day, hey, if it goes up, we're all happy, but we always know it doesn't always go up, right? It can go down. We don't want to be with $800 sitting there. So, building out a liquidation as part of their platform, to where, just like with credit cards, hey, you pay a credit card fee for processing credit cards. Same thing. Hey, you're the local merchant and you want to take Bitcoin. You don't have to worry. If someone comes in for $20, you get $20 minus your fees. What do you think needs to happen for that to go mainstream, right? How does that go from, we don't use fax machines anymore because we're sending emails, right? Who uses a fax machine anymore? We're all emailing each other. We're all scanning our stuff. I mean, when we think about the evolution of technology, at what point do mainstream people start having, not even just Bitcoin, but just, even stable coins, to use that in digital currency to start paying for things with merchants, and merchants being able to have the tech to facilitate that?
Yeah, I think there's two big problems today, right? One is trading tends to be not in real time, near real time, but not in real time. There's a delay, right? And that's one problem. And the second problem is the private keys associated with the coins that you own are vulnerable to being stolen or lost, right? So private keys are an issue. And I think we're close to the solution of both of those problems. If we take the last one first, there is some really cool technology out there which could see the end of private keys. You won't need them anymore. And this technology is called multi-party computation, which mean that those private keys won't be needed anymore, right? So that would be very, very cool if we can do that, right? You've heard the stories of some guy having his private keys on some little drive and his wife's thrown it in the garbage, right?
Hey, I did buy Bitcoin back in 2015, but I can't get into the wallet because I didn't store the keys somewhere. And because I remember a couple of them, but there's so many little phrases that you got to put in there, it would be impossible to remember them all. So they're saying, I'm probably a millionaire, but I can't get access to the wallet. So what do I do? Yeah. I hear those stories all the time.
Yeah. So it would be great if we can do away with that. And there are technologies which are patented and people are starting to build pilots around, which will help get around that, right? So there's a company called Credo over here in London that I'm aware of that's just gone into a pilot on this sort of technology. So fingers crossed that'll work and that'll fix one of the problems. And then the second one is about real time, right? So we've got to do the trade before anything moves, before either of the parties, the buyer or the seller, has a risk, right? So there's no counterparty risk anymore. You do things in real time. And I think we can fix both of those problems in relatively short order. So certainly by this time next year, I think both of them will be fixed. And at that point, it really can go mainstream, right? And there are lots of advantages to virtual currency, and one of the things that if we overcome these problems, the next thing that has to happen is the regulators have to regulate them properly, right?
You're reading my mind. You're reading my mind, because so this dovetails, and I'm glad we didn't share our questions, so we can't, you didn't tee this up for me. But some of these issues could be moot for the vast majority of people in the world that are never going to be part of the cryptocurrency kind of part of the team, if you will, and be using it. If governments, we're already seeing China and Russia, doing digital currencies backed by their fiat. And if some of these issues, like you're talking about, like, hey, you know, the government can issue their own, you know, digital currency that's backed by, you know, their fiat currency, and then you don't have to worry about, you know, private keys and some of the things that, you know, kind of are a pain right now. Does that really push the cryptocurrency piece kind of back into the shadows a little bit? Because now people trust governments, and if the US dollar ends up being a digital dollar, does that kind of take some of the wind out of the sails of all of these crypto type of solutions that are competing with basically a paper dollar right now?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think it will. I think it'll do the opposite. I think they're here to stay, and I think they'll proliferate. You know, I mean that there are many advantages to us as consumers if our money isn't controlled by a government, right?
Oh, I agree.
And you know, if it's market driven, you know, all the better. You know, not subject to political whims and regulation and so on. So I think it's definitely coming, and I think the governments just have to get their hands around it. You know, that there is no alternative because it's here to stay. And the sensible thing to do is regulate it, to tax it.
Oh, for sure.
You know, so actually, I think by doing it, going back to what you said, because you're saying, will it drive crypto into the shadows? Actually, I think what it will do is, again, the opposite. I think it will drag it out of the Wild West where it kind of slightly is at the moment, and bring it more mainstream. So you could say, you know, we're taking the West of America from 1850 up to, you know, the 21st century. You know, that's the sort of thing we're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, obviously it would be nice to not have to pass paper back and forth. As my solutions architect says all the time, it's a disease vector, right? You could pass coronavirus off on it. So, you know, it's interesting, you know, just even seeing in Kenya, one of the projects that I've been involved with 3 years called Acoin, Akon, the singer-songwriter, it's his cryptocurrency, and it's being used by Mwale Medical Center. It's a smart city there. And so by June, they hope to have 25 of the 50,000 people there getting their paychecks in it. You can go buy a Coke with it. And I was just curious. I'm like, well, why do they want to use it? Like, they don't trust the Kenya shilling. They don't trust the government. They trust Akon. You know, they trust him. So they trust an artist more than they trust their government. They'd rather use a currency that was created by a musician than their own government's currency. It kind of blows my mind, but I think, you know, you're onto something here. I think even if governments do create their own digital currencies, if there's alternatives that we don't have to trust the government, we can use and transact and do business without using that currency, we have options.
Yeah, you choose the right one for you in your situation, right? And if it's properly regulated and therefore safe, that should be a good choice for you, you know? And actually, you've hit on something which is something that's kind of important to me, which is trying to help the unbanked people of the world. There's about 2 billion people that are unbanked in the world, you know, and digital currency and the future of financial services, I think there's going to be a large part around that. And I don't know if you're aware, the UN has programs to give up to $125 to every unbanked person if we can bring them into the, you know, the more modern world.
That's pretty cool. That's a good initiative. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're looking for ways to do that easily without, you know, trying to change their life too much, you know. So blockchain can help with that for sure.
Well, even if you just think of how crazy M-Pesa went, you know, taking prepaid cell minutes, which I learned over the years is like one of the preferred forms of like paying for stuff in Africa, because again, they don't trust their currency. I owe you $10. I'm not coming to give you $10. I'm texting you $10 of Safaricom minutes, and Safaricom as a company, you know, saw this thing just go like wildfire, and they went in and bought it, right? So it's just interesting to see there was a problem. They created a very simple solution by basically making a cryptocurrency from prepaid cell minutes. And then the adoption of it just went crazy. So I think these kind of things are really neat to see. Michael, did you have any other questions for Andrew before we wrap this up?
No, I think that's a great note to leave on. The only other question I have, Andrew, you have such a breadth of experience and wisdom in the crypto space. with the last minute or so that we have, with our audience, I'm curious, in the everyday life of people, if we fast forward 5 or 10 years, what can they expect to see different in life because of the work that crypto and blockchain is doing in the world?
Well, I think you can sum that up with more choice and more convenience, right? I think almost everything will be digital. I think almost everything will be held on a smartphone or maybe even an implant in 5 years' time, right? If Elon Musk
around
is
on you,
great,
yeah.
right? Yeah, I mean, Musk is the things that he's doing right now are incredible, right? So I think it'll be choice, convenience, everything digital, and everything in your hand or implanted.
Well said. Well, on that note, Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. And Daniel, thank you for your insights. I always love you bringing in topics about the unbanked and Acoin. I think it always adds a unique and benevolent note to the conversations.
For sure. No, it's been great. I enjoyed the conversation, guys.
Likewise.
Thanks again. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for streaming this episode of Quick Tech Talk with Michael Anderson and Daniel Sloan.